extra motivation to win this tournament. And also we have Anish Giri, who also having some conversations with him in Norway Chess. He wants to be in Miami.
How about you, David? Who's your favorite?
Just because he's in great form, I'm going to say Teimour Radjabov, actually. I think at least one of the three candidates. It just feels like being match fit is going to be so important in this type of quick format. Radjabov, meanwhile, just closing his eyes there, but is that a picture of himself behind him, dressed as an astronaut? I mean, it looks a bit like him. Either way, I'm going to say, even if he might not be the favourite in this game, I think Teimour Radjabov, he's shown it before. Last year, he won an event on the tour. He did very well in the tour finals. I'm going to say he's going to be up there.
Yeah, both of these players have shown that they are capable of winning tournaments on the Meltwater Champions Chess Tour. And we do know even more is at stake right now, because this is the final tournament before the next major, which will take place with all players on site in Miami, in Florida, which sounds nice to be there in the sun. And maybe these two players will qualify. Here we go, the tournament has started and we have the first moves.
We have the first moves. It's a King's Pawn opening. It's the Spanish opening, the Roy Lopez. And okay, no Berlin endgame, no quick Berlin draw. That's a relief. We know that Duda is a very fighting player. Meanwhile, Jovanka's prediction is correct. Radjabov with this opening choice, just trying to be solid as black, just trying to survive the opening. And white is the first to castle. Sooner or later, Duda will start advancing white's pawns forward in the centre, increasing the tension there. Early days, this is a position I've had many times myself, though, and black is very solid for now. All pieces on the board, though, and it's going to be a long game, a tense game. How is Duda going to get his pieces out?
We did learn a lot about openings in the previous tournament, the Chessable Masters. So what opening are we looking at here?
So it's a variation of the Spanish opening. We would call it an anti-Berlin. So black was trying to play the Berlin defense, the Berlin wall, where he's rock solid, queens come off very early. But the reason it's an anti-Berlin is white didn't allow all those exchanges. White didn't allow the Berlin defense. So, okay, pieces are just developing now. And in the Spanish opening, in the Italian opening, which is kind of a cousin to this type of setup, it's all about manoeuvring. It's all about where to put the pieces, how to push kind of your pawns on either flank later on. Yeah. Both sides have castled now. Both sides got their pieces on very nice squares.
Yeah. And now the kind of question for black is, how are they going to, okay, well, we see him move. I mean, the real issue for me is whether white will manage to go forward in the centre with a pawn. If not, then kind of the energy transfers to the pieces, and Radjabov kind of keeping it tight.
Yeah, Radjabov keeping it tight. If you look at black's pawns, especially this last pawn push black has made around the black king, he's just trying to cover all the squares in his half. He's not necessarily trying to push forward, while Jovanka has mentioned there will be a key break, and we'll look out for it after this last knight move. Wow, I was going to say white is the one going for a pawn break. White really wants to push this pawn forward to the centre. If black had been slow, for example, just a nothing move, then suddenly white pushing forward would be fantastic for Duda. Duda establishes these really strong pawns. After a trade, for example, these pawns would dominate the centre, dominate the game. But Radjabov says, no, just before you get the opportunity to push your pawn, I'm going to do the same. And black pushes forward. I'm incredibly impressed he played this move, made this decision so quickly. But the idea is, after a pawn trade now, black still has more space in the centre. This stronghold, decently protected, I think, by black's rook, by black's bishop and knight, all protecting this pawn in the centre of the board. And meanwhile, white is the one lacking space. So great play, I think, from Teimour Radjabov. This pawn wasn't captured. White is going to keep the tension here, and Duda decides to just try and gain some space. This is a very Magnus Carlsen-esque type of move, trying to push this pawn as far down the board as possible in readiness for an endgame later, but also just trying to clamp down on black's structure on this side.
Yeah, I love this type of long-term strategy. It looks like a kind of pawn move, but then it becomes so good in an endgame, as you mentioned. And, well, Radjabov says, no, I don't want that, and instead ask the question to the bishop. Are you going to capture the knight? Probably not. Or are you going to take a step back? I would definitely keep my bishop.
Yeah.
It wouldn't even be a question there.
Why is Duda pausing, though? Normally, in the Spanish opening, you nearly never, ever want to give up your light-squared bishop for a knight, unless you can double your opponent's pawns. But here, if the white bishop takes the black knight, black just recaptures with his bishop. Very healthy position there. Yeah. So is Duda thinking of maybe trading a set of pawns in the centre? I mean, why not just step back? That bishop won the square. Looks very healthy, very sensible.
Yeah. Looks like a good choice. I mean, I hadn't even considered pawn takes pawn, but after commenting on Praggnanandha's games, I should always be on the alert for those kind of counter-attacking moves. Very difficult to spot, but at the same time, once you get into the habit of calculating them, they kind of really become like second nature. And there we saw the sun streaming down on Duda's face because it is summer.
It is.
Doesn't look like it from Duda's camera, but it is summer.
It is summer. And there we see the move that you suggested, pawn takes pawn. OK, now the calculation has to come on. And we have to work out what's going to happen after pawn takes bishop, or alternatively, like just captures the pawn with the knight.
Yeah, two choices here for Radjabov. Maybe we can show, Jovanka mentioned two moves there. White has just captured a pawn in the centre. Either you can just recapture the pawn and say, OK, nothing much has changed, it's just a fair exchange. Or you can say, let's get ambitious now. Take this bishop off the board, and after White recaptures a knight, suddenly it's level material after a couple of trades there. But the question is, can White grab a pawn in the centre of the board? This pawn is only protected once. It's attacked twice, however. So knight takes pawn does look like it wins a pawn, at least temporarily for Black. Black might have compensation, for example, if the bishop moves, due to the fact this bishop is now unrivaled. It's on a great diagonal, pointing down towards the White king later. This is quite a typical kind of pawn sacrifice, but judging by Radjabov's style, he won't go for it. He doesn't really need to sacrifice a pawn at the moment. I think in the current position, if he just recaptures this pawn, this is the first option I mentioned earlier, then he's got a very healthy kind of structure here. White's bishop still attacked. White's bishop now will not take this knight because this pawn is defended sufficiently. It's also defended by the bishop. So White can't take. So I think Duda, instead of taking that, he'll just step back with his bishop, hitting the knight in the centre. Jovanka, are you surprised by how quickly they've both played? It's already 13 moves down the line. Not the typical kind of manoeuvres. I don't think this is opening preparation.
Yeah, I'm very surprised. You know, they've taken a lot of committal decisions. You know, first of all, Radjabov playing that pawn break in the centre so early and so quickly as well. You know, because did he calculate this? I mean, this is all forcing stuff. I mean, did he consider the consequences?
Do you think they have opening prep from the candidates when they played each other there that they maybe are using?
Well, I checked the database. This is rare stuff. This has never been played before. So, you know, both players are freestyling it, but they're freestyling in a very confident manner. And there we see Radjabov. I've never seen that posture from him, have you?
No, I mean, we've seen him close his eyes, kind of lean back like a Jedi and just meditate, but he looks like he's falling asleep. I mean, it's been a busy week, busy couple of weeks for both these players with the candidates, Madrid, travelling home afterwards, recovering. So I think that's why I was surprised they were playing so quickly. I was expecting maybe them just to kind of slowly find their way into this game, but it turns out Radjabov, he is awake. He's just leaning back and making this big decision. So we showed those two different lines. He's just choosing. He's weighing up the pros and cons between those two variations, comparing them, deciding what to go for. One of them is a pawn sacrifice for Black. I said it's not his style, but he's considering it, maybe, Jovanka.
Yeah, I think he definitely is. Just by him taking a pause, you know, he's trying to see the bigger picture. And just trying to enjoy what's in front of him. And the reason I mention enjoyment, because, you know, it is the summer of chess. Yes. You know, we're the FTX summer of chess, and we love it when everyone at home gets involved in the conversation, joins in the fun, tweets us their questions, their comments, and also their selfies. Yes. And you can do all that by tweeting us using the hashtag #ChessChamps. And remember, we will try and feature them on the show.
And the FTX Summer of Chess could be even more exciting for all the fans if you go grab your free FTX key. And you can do that by, for example, using that QR code that you see on the bottom of the screen right now. Or if you head to ftxcryptocup.com, you can claim a free key, which will give you access to a bunch of cool content, competition, prizes, all the way up to $100,000 will be given out for the FTX Summer of Chess. So go claim your free key. And I'm going to do that as well.
Yeah, nothing better than free stuff.
I know. I know. And the chance to win, you know, a bunch of money.
Yeah, that's always good. And also, it's very nice being part of the community.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things that I've actually adored because of my job as the commentator on the Champions Chess Tour. You know, how many people just join in the conversation. They send me messages. I try and reply as often as I can. And it's a real loving and very active, very friendly community.
Yeah.
And just, you can do the same in FTX. And if you can combine money, chess,
Yeah,
it's great.
I know,
Combination. It's what we all dream about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're also very good, like I follow you on Twitter, for example. Sometimes you share puzzles, for example, which is always a lot of fun. There's going to be puzzles as well in this community. I love that about chess. You know, challenge each other with small puzzles from time to time.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's actually great because the last two, I actually started just sharing a few puzzles that really impressed me.
Yeah.
And suddenly, you know, everyone was sharing that puzzle. Well, I shared it from someone else, to be honest. And then they shared it on and they spread the message because we can all enjoy chess beauty.
Yeah.
And the second was actually on my Insta. And that was, there's actually a story behind it. So in the late noughties, I can't remember when, a French teammate of mine, he showed me this puzzle. And it was fantastic. You know, I think I'd had a terrible chess weekend, but I saw this puzzle, we solved it together. Oh, we see a pawn, we see the sacrifice on the board.
Yeah, Radjabov giving up a pawn, and actually all of the moves we showed previously, right now white is one pawn up, but black has the bishop pair, especially black's light squared bishop in the centre of the board is going to be a great piece. But meanwhile, Jovanka, you were saying?
Yeah, I was talking about solving puzzles. And, I mean, one of the great things about solving puzzles is that you give up material. And, yeah, this puzzle was just amazing. It haunted me for years and it annoyed me so much that I never knew the composer. And then I found it. I found it a few days ago.
Really?
Yeah, it was actually in the Master Your Chess Duda book, and I found it. I literally jumped up for joy. I shared it with all my friends and also shared it on Instagram.
Wow, that's so cool. All right, we do have a few moves. So I'm guessing it's heating up in the game. Who are you liking it for now then, David?
It's definitely heating up, and I'm going to sit on the fence, Kaya.
Yeah.
I'm really not sure. I like what black's doing just from a kind of idealistic standpoint. Black has this fantastic bishop in the centre of the board. But then again, white is very solid for now, and white has an extra pawn. If we do a quick count, white has these four, sorry, not that square. White has these 4 pawns against black's 3. And these black 3 are slightly compromised as well. There are doubled pawns. Radjabov, meanwhile, pushes a pawn forward, trying to utilise a pin on the A file. White's pawn cannot take, of course, because the rook would fall off behind it. But in the current position, for example, if Duda pushes this pawn forward, maybe this pawn won't survive long term. It is a bit of a weakness. It's an intruder in the black camp, but it will take Radjabov several moves to go and win it. And in the meantime, white does have a strong pawn centre. I'm going to say I prefer black slightly, but at the same time, maybe more materialistic players would say white. So how about you, Jovanka? In the current position, white does have this question to answer of this pawn attack twice.
Yeah, it's a nice move by Radjabov. I didn't see it at all, putting pressure on the weak spot because, like you say, you know, suddenly black has a target. What's white's plan? I don't know what white's plan is.
What if he just moves it 1 square up?
Yeah, he'll do that. But I think Radjabov will, as David mentioned, just hunt down that pawn.
Maybe the queen will slide across.
And then the big issue is, yeah, you know, white has this amazing central knight on the E5 square, but the knight sitting on the G3, well, that's dominated by black's pawns. And the dark square bishop doesn't really have a good point to look at either.
Yeah, the MVP, the most valuable piece here, is definitely the bishop in the centre of the board. It's got its eyes on this diagonal, it's controlling everything, and it's the only unrivaled bishop in the position. In order to win this pawn, remember, white had to give up his light square bishop for a knight. So, yeah, for example, if white tries to keep his pawn alive here, push it forward even further, then this is actually the ideal setup for black. Look at this, the queen and bishop dying down against the white king side now. White's king is actually not easy to defend. You're going to have to make some ugly moves to defend this pawn. And also, meanwhile, this white extra pawn is not going to stay on the board for much longer. It is about to drop off. So, yeah, maybe Radjabov did have this plan in mind the whole time. If we backtrack to the current position, if you don't push this pawn forward and kind of offer it up, just kind of step into no man's land, then the only other way to save it is to push this pawn. But this is ugly because suddenly this is a backward pawn, and I can't see a way to actually take advantage of it right now, but Yeah, somehow this pawn structure now for white is very ugly. You can never push this pawn forward to attack black's bishop because this square is an outpost that black will control.
Yeah, no, I don't like that pawn move at all. You mean you're handing all the light squares to black on a silver platter and you're like, no, don't like it. The only thing that I can think of, and I'm just thinking back to something that you said once, that, you know, when you're fighting against the bishop pair, you have to accelerate the play. Yeah. So therefore, just try to kick back the light square bishop, maybe, because that's my thing. Push pawns. I want to go push the B pawn one square.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually, Ivanka. So, for example, if black takes this pawn now, restoring the material balance, then suddenly at least white gains a lot of time. We could see an exchange here, and suddenly at least this bishop is forced backwards. Maybe it can still stay on this great diagonal, but at least white's kind of got this nice pawn center now. White can start developing his bishop out. I'm not sure exactly where, maybe to the long diagonal, maybe even to this one. And the game goes on. Yep. Black has the bishop pair, but white has maybe the slightly better structure. So, yeah, it's all about taste here. Do you want the bishop pair? Do you want an extra pawn? Do you want the better structure long term? The players, they've just got to go for what suits their style more, where they feel more comfortable. It's roughly balanced. The computer, the evaluation bar above the board, saying it's roughly level, but everything to play for. And yeah, the more I think about it, the more I like Radjabov's choice. Not just locking down the position, taking the kind of easy way out. Radjabov's gone for something very double-edged. And Duda, you can see, is reacting to that now with a 4-minute think. That's a long, long think.
Wow.
And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he thinks a bit longer, because this is a real critical situation. If black wins the pawn back and doesn't have to give anything in return, then black simply has an advantage with the bishop pair.
And David, I was just going to ask you to read the body language of Duda there, because he looked out of the window. Is he happy? Not happy?
He's looking for inspiration. He's hoping the sun's shining in on him, that you know, some great move will pop into his mind suddenly.
The sun's shining on one square. Like, oh, okay.
Exactly. I mean, if he plays an amazing move now, then we'll know where it came from.
Has that ever happened to you during a game?
Oh, like you got a sign, like, I should move this piece?
No. I think it must have at some point, but
it must have been like some divine inspiration somewhere.
I'm trying to think, no. I mean, there was one time where... Oh, this is really embarrassing, but this is when I was really, really young, and I didn't realise it was rude to eat at the board. So I was eating a sandwich that my mum had made me. I think I was maybe 8 or 9, and then a piece of lettuce dropped, and then it went on the piece, and I kind of touched the piece to get rid of it, and then my opponent said, touch move.
Oh, no.
So I had to move that piece, and it turned out it was quite a good move. But, it wasn't the best move, but it was quite a good move. And I ended up winning anyway. I'm not sure that was divine inspiration or luck, because I was already winning, but... yeah, there are these things in chess, they do happen sometimes. You do read about stranger things than that.
Yeah.
I know Magnus has sometimes like opened with a move, like according to maybe the seat he was on the plane, maybe like 1 B or whatever.
And I mean, when Trump was just elected and he was playing in New York, he played the Trumpovsky variation and plays the London system when he's in London. He plays the Scandinavian opening because he's Scandinavian, Magnus. So chess players, they do look for these patterns, these signs. Yeah, I'm not sure how much I would say be superstitious, because being superstitious definitely comes with its drawbacks. Yeah. But yeah, chess, actually, as we'll maybe find out, the Bobby Fischer story, he was very, very into these signs, and he was very into these signals, and he would find links between real life stuff he's heard and stuff that happens on the chessboard. But yeah, in general, I think it's best to just calculate and trust that more than anything.
And after more than 6 minutes, here comes the pawn.
It pushes forward, and we're going to see Radjabov hunt that pawn down, just slide the queen to the side, as David indicated, or we could go for something else. I don't see anything else. It's just pretty much a one-track plan, or one-track mind is what I wanted to say.
Yep, I guess you can maybe make an argument for black's rook just stepping down 1 square to blockade this white pawn, with the idea of black's queen sliding to the corner. But it feels a bit slow, and there we go. This was the most logical move for black, just swinging the queen across. White's A pawn now is going to disappear any moment, but This is the moment we've been waiting for. When in doubt, push the H-pawn. That is the motto of all the top players nowadays, especially in rapid chess. And white's H-pawn has gone 2 squares forward. And wow, Radjabov just blocks. So the 2 H-pawns now blocking each other. But this has left some weak squares in both camps, in both sides.
I don't like
and
Radjabov's last move. I mean, it just looks awful, actually, because, you know, you've weakened yourself on the dark square. There you go. Consequences, he's put his bishop on that square. But, I mean, ideally, I would have tried to manoeuvre a knight to that square in G5.
Yeah, Radjabov weakening himself, and if we jump in, we can try and figure out what just happened there. So black's queen was attacking this pawn, and now this pawn is destined to drop off anyway. It's not going to survive long. So Duda, this is very good chess strategy. He switched the play to the opposite flank while black's pieces are distracted on the queen side, and he pushed forward on with his H-pawn, trying to push forward again. For example, if we do see Radjabov get greedy and grab the pawn back, then suddenly this pawn would be really, really annoying for Radjabov to deal with. If he pushes forward, trying to bypass that pawn, then suddenly the white knights jump in. This knight on F5, fantastic piece, supported by its mate over here, and these 2 pieces together are just going to cause all sorts of damage. So I understand why Radjabov didn't want to allow the advance of this pawn 1 square forward. He blocked it off, but as Ivanka said, it weakens, first of all, this square, which the white bishop jumped into, but if you could somehow get this knight to that square, that would be ideal. And there are also ideas at some point later, maybe not now, it's a bit weakening, but this white pawn could start pushing forward, trying to undermine this weakness, especially while black's pieces are gravitating towards the left side. It feels like now is the moment. But instead, OK, Duda brought his bishop forward to the weakened G5 square, and now Radjabov stepping back. So maybe a threat in the position. Black wants to push this pawn and fork the 2 white minor pieces, hitting the knight, hitting the bishop at the same time. For example, if white's queen steps forward, maybe you could consider this one. It's a bit weakening for the black king, but this would win a piece at least. So in the current position, what will Duda do? He needs to maybe move one of these 2 pieces away to walk away from that double attack. There are ideas, however, just looking at it, of white sacrificing a knight at some point. I'm not sure it works right now, but you could definitely imagine a situation where white sacrifices a knight just to get the queen into the attack. I don't think he'll go for it right now because black has enough defenders around the king, but watch out for that one later.
Yeah. Now you highlighted that idea, I'm thinking, oh, step back with the bishop, move the rook up, sack, sack, sack. OK, instead we have a decision. I'm a bit surprised by that decision, actually. I was expecting the bishop to retreat. Instead, we see the knight centralise itself. Yeah, take a step back.
Yeah, it's dropped back. I guess it wants to maybe reroute to this square to attack this bishop, kick it away from the centre of the board. Also, now there's some tension on the e-file, meaning that maybe black doesn't have enough time, due to that tension, to go and grab this pawn in the corner of the board. So notice how Duda's just trying to distract Radjabov as long as possible so that Radjabov doesn't have time to go and capture this white A-pawn. It's really, really complicated right now. If Radjabov can go and win this pawn, for example, if he can take it over the next couple of moves, then he's just doing great as black. But if he doesn't have enough time, then of course this pawn is going to be just a nuisance for him to deal with later. It's going to be a potential winner for Duda. It's the key moment now, I think. Just how does Radjabov deal with this central tension? For example, if he swaps the rooks and then goes to try and win this pawn, then suddenly after a rook exchange, the white queen will get into the heart of the black position. And suddenly, uh-oh, this is a check. It's not the end of the world, but it looks very, very scary. For example, the knight could jump back maybe to block. Maybe you can get away with this. But I think you have to go for something like this as Radjabov if you want to win your pawn back. You can't win this pawn back right now, we should mention, because suddenly the black queen is overloaded. She's defending both her rooks, and one of the rooks will drop. For example, after a rook takes rook check, then suddenly the queen has been deflected away from the protection of its other rook.
So is this what Teimour Radjabov should have gone for earlier? He should have taken that pawn earlier, but now it's maybe too late?
Right now, I think it's too late right now to capture this pawn. It's just about whether he can maintain the tension even longer and kind of save it for later. It's like when you write a to-do list. It's like, how long can you delay it before it's too late? When is the deadline? When do you have to capture that pawn?
I can relate to that.
Yeah. And yeah, I think capturing that pawn, it's been on his to-do list for, 5 moves now? But he's left it a long time.
Yeah.
It's getting close.
I heard it was a good philosophy if you want to improve your imagination, just to kind of act as though you have all the time in the world.
Aha.
Yeah, you know, like you have a deadline, just behave as though you've got it, you know, the deadline is going to be in 10 years' time. And then you actually find that you get more creative and you do it, apparently. But they do say that you should combine that with something that they call urgent optimism.
Okay, which is?
Which is, so basically that, you know, you should be optimistic. But again, you have to act, you know, you might not get a second chance to be so positive, so.
And Jovanka, that's quite useful for chess, right? Because when you're looking for attacking ideas especially, sometimes the best way is to look, if my opponent does nothing, if I get 4 or 5 moves, where do my pieces want to be? If I have all the time in the world, I get 4 moves, my rook wants to be here, my bishop wants to be here, and that's how you start planning. Of course, you have to take your opponent's plans into consideration and kind of calculate. It's a race between your plans, your opponent's plans, but having all the time in the world, it's a nice luxury.
And well, a load of trades. The rooks have come off, and now the knight has traded itself with the bishop. So now we've got a unique situation of bishop pair versus knight pair. And what do you think about this? Rook takes pawn. Well, Radjabov is kind of confident that his bishop pair will be able to do some defensive mastery. Yeah,
so he has won his pawn back. He can finally check that off the to-do list. But now, after a rook exchange, which I think we're about to see happen, suddenly the black queen is on a poor square. And Duda, OK, he just moved his hand back down to the mouse. He does exchange these rooks. Is it time for white's queen to jump all the way up to the top of the board and give a check? This is something we mentioned earlier. Or, potentially, if Duda wants to play it safe, he could move one of his knights. And let's jump in. It's level material now, balanced again, as Jovanka mentions. 2 knights against 2 bishops. But it is about which pieces are superior, and it's so tempting. Just give a check. Why not? Hit the king. If the black bishop drops back and blocks, then this bishop is at least pinned. It's immobilized, and it will be for the next few moves. But if the black king goes to the corner of the board, it looks pretty safe. However, this pawn is now weakened. It's defended by black's bishop, and I'm just looking at ways you could maybe start attacking a few pawns. You could attack this bishop now. You could attack this pawn. You can attack this pawn. It's kind of a multiple attack. Maybe you can even bring the white knight into the attack, hitting this bishop, this key piece, remember, that's holding everything together for black. I mean, this is just too tempting for me. But the other thing Duda might be thinking about, other than giving this check with his queen, is to play his knight over this way. And this is a double attack, hitting the queen and bishop. And this would at least guarantee that you get rid of black's bishop pair. Once the queen moves, then we could see an exchange here. And now it's just knight against bishop, only 1 set. But white is maybe left with this poor knight that Jovanka highlighted earlier.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Not a great piece.
I was going to say Duda's going to make that knight attacking move, forking the queen and bishop, if he's not feeling very optimistic about his position. That's kind of, for me, is a bailout line.
This is safety first, just trading off 1 set of pieces and then maybe centralizing the white knight, putting it in the center here. But long term, I see problems here for Duda, because if you look at all of his pawns, they're on dark squares. They could be targets for the black bishop later on. So I don't like this option. As Jovanka says, it's safety first approach. That's not Duda's style. He needs to go on the attack. Therefore, why not give a check with the white queen? I think this is what he should go for. And with 5 minutes, he's just mulling up the 2 options. He's maybe just plucking up the courage to go all out on the attack. And remember, queens get on really well with knights when they're attacking. They're the dream attacking combo, because knights are the only pieces that can move in ways the queens can't. And yeah, I just love this idea, just going to kick away this black bishop. And maybe the one downside, the one scary thing about this is that the black queen can sometimes sneak in behind and start checking the white king. But for now, the white king at least has 1 safe square to hide on. So this shouldn't be too worrying for white.
So what do you think? Will it end up with a winner or a draw this game?
If Duda gives the check with his queen, I think we'll see a winner.
Okay.
I think we'll see Duda. But, OK, he does it.
He does.
Does it. And, OK, I'm expecting the king to move, and it does. And I really like this knight move, because it also overprotects every single potential weakness that white has. I'm thinking of that pawn sitting there on the light square on g2.
Yeah.
Protected, my friend. You can't attack it.
No more checkmating ideas for black anytime soon. Black's queen is also terribly placed, so even though the black queen can come down and give a check on the first rank, like we showed, it's just 1 check for now. And also, Radjabov has some serious questions to answer. Where to put the black bishop? I don't like it for black suddenly. If black had one more move just before this bishop was attacked, just before this knight jumped forward, then I think Radjabov was doing great. But it's all about time. It's all about tempo, as they say in chess. And right now, where does this black light squared bishop run to? If it runs over to this half of the board, then it's offside. It's no longer centralized, and the other white knight can start jumping in towards the center. Jovanka, do you think the momentum's turning now?
Totally. I mean, I think Duda's position is just great. I mean, he can't even think about going on the counter-attack and attacking this knight on G3 by pushing the H pawn. But yeah, everything is kind of falling apart.
Yeah, you mentioned going on the counter-attack, hitting this knight. That would make some sense, except for maybe just the knight taking the bishop and in this position, not getting greedy and capturing this pawn, because suddenly, whoops, there would be a checkmate on the back rank. This king would be trapped. But instead, I think you mentioned just taking back this pawn. And yeah, white's king, despite the weird kind of aesthetic value of these three double, kind of tripled pawns now, white's king will be very safe hiding behind them. And OK, we did see a couple of other moves. So this bishop didn't, in fact, run away. Radjabov counterattacked. He brought his queen back to try and offer a trade of queens. The black queen is defended by her bishop, and suddenly Duda grabbed a pawn. He's a pawn up again. This has been the theme of the day so far for him. He grabbed one of black's doubled pawns, and after the bishop stepped back, suddenly another attack. Every move, Duda's attacking something, and Radjabov has dealt with that by centralizing his queen. So Radjabov has kind of regrouped, protected everything, but it's come at the cost of one pawn. So now, again, Duda in the driving seat. And first question to me is, can you just push your pawn forward, maybe attack this bishop and try to grab the pawn behind it when the bishop moves? That's one question.
You've got to be careful, though, because the king is a little bit unprotected.
Yeah, white's king doesn't have too many defenders. Yeah. So, for example, if the queen is attacked, maybe now greed is not good. Actually, there's a couple of reasons I spot, but one of them could be suddenly this bishop comes to life and double attacks the white queen and both of the white knights. This is a horrible situation for white. You will lose a piece. So, yeah, maybe too many downsides with that one. Maybe you just need to keep these pawns kind of intact right now just to block out this, this black bishop. So if not that, then how do you consolidate? What would you do as white? One move that I would want to play at some point, maybe now or later, is to just hide my king away from any potential checks in the corner. Maybe you can make an argument for moving this white knight into the center as well. I kind of want to jump it into this square to give a check later on. It's a difficult choice now, actually, for Duda.
It's not easy because there are a lot of attacks that Radjabov has in the air. You know, you highlighted the bishop attacking the queen. I'm also thinking of going back to an original idea of the pawn stepping forward and asking questions to the knight. Yeah. And of course, Duda always has to be thinking about what happens if the black queen dives into the position, gives a check to the white king. Yeah. So a lot of danger somehow, and I think Duda has to be thinking about ways to consolidate. I must admit, I am still kind of swayed by your pawn attacking the bishop. Yeah. I think he just has to tread a little bit more accurately, and then...
Yeah, maybe actually here, instead of grabbing this pawn, as we saw, that would backfire. Maybe the queen could just slide across, offer an exchange, and maybe this is the way to keep control. Queens are very good in the center, and a queen exchange here, at least white has no risk. White is a pawn up. I'm not sure you win because black's bishops are strong, but you are a pawn up. And instead, a different move. And what do you think of this one, Jovanka? After black's queen came across, threatening maybe this check, white has guarded against that check by dropping his knight back. This looks a bit odd, maybe, because black's queen, for example, can centralize. Trying to line up on the square, you mentioned it's protected. So one thing you don't want to do is move the knight away because, whoops, this is checkmate. But actually, maybe here this doesn't work because white's queen can just take this pawn, defending the knight. And the key thing is the knight defends the G2 square. So, yeah, maybe not possible for black.
Yeah. I'm a little bit baffled by that move. You know, I know we kind of say the knight is the king's best friend and everything, so people will be like, yeah, you know, why are you guys not saying this is a great move? But it does feel a little bit passive, and Radjabov now will be thinking about ways that he can put pressure on the white queen.
Yeah.
All right, well, the bar is over to Jan-Christoph Duda's side. He has almost 3 minutes left on the clock. We do have the first result in the FTX Road to Miami. Hans Niemann, the 19-year-old, won the first game against fellow American Sam Shanklin. And 3 points for Hans Niemann. What a start for the young American.
Yeah, we're going to have to start calling Hans Niemann the marathon man because he actually played an over-the-board game this morning.
Really?
6-hour game. Over the board, and then he jumped straight into this tournament.
What?
Yeah, he played a 6-hour draw, a really difficult, long queen endgame, nearly 100 moves in the German Bundesliga. And I think he's had maybe an hour or two break and then straight into this event. So. Yeah. Impressive from the youngster.
It is incredibly impressive because you have to think, you know, playing a 6-hour classical game, for most people, is going to be exceptionally tiring. Yeah. All they want to do is sleep afterwards, and he's gone and, well, he's going to play one tournament to another.
Yeah, he's going to play for 4 hours here as well.
Yeah, and I have to say one thing about Hans. He's the most improved player, I think, in the world. Mm-hmm. Well, okay, you know, because he made a jump. I think when I first heard of him before the pandemic, he was around about 2,400, around just a bit higher rated than me. And now he's like, oof, wow, skyrocketing,
Closing in on that magical 2,700 mark. That shows the elite. Once you hit 2,700, it means you're one of the best players in the world. And he's closing in. And there's actually an intriguing race. I follow it on 2700chess.com. I think it's the top-ranked junior players. So under the age of 20, Firouzja is #1 by quite a distance. But between places 2 and 5, I think they've been switching places every single day for the last 2 weeks. They're always winning a game, then losing a game, then catching each other up. And
that's exciting.
It's as if they're pushing each other to be better. And it's all the Indian players and Hans Niemann. That's the race of the youngsters.
And Hans Niemann, well, he is born and raised in the US, so in America they must be very excited about him.
Yeah, I think Hans, he's been disappointed there hasn't been as much recognition in the US from at least the federation, from some tournament organisers, as he feels he deserves. But he's going to be in the US team for sure someday, and one of the most talented players I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, and the US need to host their own Olympiad. Well, not their own Olympiad. They need to host the chess Olympiad, and then they can have 2 teams.
Aha. Yeah, they have so many great players right now. Sam Shanklin, one of them, he is in the US Olympiad team, but he lost game 1 here to Hans Niemann. Now, we do have more moves coming in this game. And you did say earlier, David, you were predicting a win for one player. What is it looking like right now?
Yeah, I'm going to stay true to that prediction just because I have a feeling that this position suits Duda slightly more than it suits Radjabov, because Duda really thrives when it's a bit imbalanced. Here, the main imbalance is the knight pair against the bishop pair, but also Duda has this extra pawn temporarily. And with this last move, he's pushing forward, making his move for victory. And wow, okay, this is all about counter-attacking now. White's pawn attacked to bishop, black's queen counter-attacked against the knight. A lot of exchanges happen there in the blink of an eye, and one set of knights and bishops have left the board. Meanwhile, Duda still has his extra pawn advantage. Right now, if you look on the left half of the board, 3 versus 1 pawn advantage there for Duda. That is potentially decisive. Meanwhile, black has a 3 versus 2 advantage on the king side, but white's king is super safe right now. And queen and knight are usually a better duo than a queen and bishop. So it all looks like it's adding up in Duda's favour right now. Ivanka, any chances here for Radjabov at all? He has to go for an attack against the white king, right?
Yeah, absolutely. He has to at least try and scare Duda, you know, make him, try to kind of bully him with some mistakes or some threats. And, OK, I think he's doing the right things by pushing Harry all the way to the 4th rope. Maybe Harry's going to go all the way down to the 3rd. Maybe the bishop will come and join and threaten some checks. But Duda, he just seems quite calm, doesn't seem very fazed about it at all. I mean, if I were him, I would have thought about centralising the queen, because there's a queen endgame. Queens do great in the centre, but no, he's worked it all out.
Duda's the Prince of Darkness, according to his camera right now. But he looks like he's going to win this game, unless Radjabov can pull a rabbit out the hat and work some miracles right now. I just don't see how he can disturb the white king. As you mentioned, Ivanka, his idea has been a good one, pushing the black h-pawn down the board. But if you push it any further, it just gets captured. There aren't really enough attacks, threats, checks against the white king. The white king can simply actually just run away if it needs to. Enough kind of shelter around it with all the white pawns there. And, OK, the bishop and queen do line up. The black queen is now threatening to come down to the h2 square, checking the white king. I say a threat. The white king is just going to run. It's not checkmate. And, OK, it runs anyway. Why not? If you see your opponent's threat, just preempt it and laugh at them. And that's what Duda's doing.
I was just reminded of that line from Ghostbusters, I ain't afraid of no ghost. I mean, just, he's like, queen and bishop lined up, it's nothing. You're not going to checkmate me. My knight covers everything. And, OK, now it's just a question of the white queen just improvising to the right square. And, well, you can just see it there. If Radjabov is forced to improve his king, then there is nothing in the position for black.
And the clocks are ticking as well. We have another result. Wei Yi has won the first game against Wojtaszek, who is also from Poland, same as Jan-Krzysztof Duda. And it's definitely heating up here in the first round. Shakhriyar Mamdyarov, fellow Azerbaijani to Teimour Radjabov, the bar all the way over to his side in that big game against Levon Aronian.
And the two young American players, Sam Sevian and Jeffrey Zhang, they're both winning their games as well. The evaluation bar's all the way on their sides. So, yeah, lots of decisive games in this first round.
Giri struggling here in the first game. Wow, already drama, and it's only round 1 in the FTX road to Miami. Exciting stuff.
Yeah, and Duda, his king isn't there. He don't care. The white king is not getting checkmated anytime soon. As Jovanka mentioned, just centralise the white queen. He can bully Radjabov here with the threat of a queen exchange because white is 1 pawn up. If the queens come off, white's 3 versus 1 advantage on that side will win the game. So Radjabov, he has to run away from this exchange. Unless he can maybe just exchange off the queens and make a run for it with the black king into the centre of the board. But I don't think he can. I just think he's too slow. And wow, he allows a queen exchange. He pushes a pawn forward. Jovanka, surely he's too slow here as black.
Totally right. It's just a question of counting now.
Yeah, it's a question of counting. And if we jump forward to the current position, white's queen stepped back, black's pawn push. We say it's about counting. Black is not racing those pawns down the board anytime soon. And here, after a queen exchange, say, for example, the white knight jumps into the centre of the board, hitting this bishop, also hitting this pawn. Black's bishop has to move, and I just don't see what is to stop Jan-Krzysztof Duda pushing all of these pawns forward. This pawn maybe to destabilise the bishop. It just looks like an easy race, an easy win here for white. And here we go. The queens have come off the board. I say easy. There's still a little bit of care to be done. You need to keep all your pawns on the board as white. You need to keep as many pawns on the board as possible, at least. And we're heading in this direction. And I'm not sure which pawn to push, to be honest. It looks like you can push them in any order. You could even push maybe this pawn forward just to stop black from kind of uniting his 3, from connecting these 3 guys. But to be honest, I would just push this. OK, yeah, as Duda has just done. Push this pawn forward, and it's inevitable now. These 3 pawns together are going to win the game for white.
Yeah. And Radjabov running in with his king. And there we see the idea that you mentioned on the board. And the sad thing for Radjabov is that even if the black king takes 1 step forward to attack the knight, that knight's not going anywhere. You can just simply push the c-pawn and protect your own pawn. And look at that. That knight protects everything.
This knight is dominant in the centre for white. And I think we've got to check on the players now because we could see a result anytime soon. Radjabov, is he reacting? He's down to 10 seconds on the clock. He's got a desperate situation on the board.
It's resign or just make a random move. What's he going to do? 5 seconds? OK, so he attacks. OK, well, Duda supports the knight.
This is complete domination right now. White's knight in the centre of the board, a glorious piece, and you simply can't kick it away. If you can't kick away that knight, there's nothing else to do. And Radjabov retreats his bishop. White's knight can go and grab another pawn now.
Do you think Duda's going to be a bit sadistic and try to run his king to the right and try to win that h-pawn?
Yep, why not? And here as white, I think I would simply grab black's pawn on the c7 square, get rid of the remaining black pawn on this queen side, and yeah, as Jovanka mentions, march the king back where it came from. G1, H2, H3, and yeah, that's just game over. So I think the problem here for Duda is that everything wins. He just has to choose a way that doesn't allow Radjabov any hope or any counterplay.
We've seen that go wrong before, and especially in time trouble, but it is Teimour Radjabov with only 15 seconds on the clock.
Duda now, he spent most of his time on this one move. He's now down to around 30 seconds. He's just calculating. He knows that no matter how much time he spends now, he'll have worked out the next 3 or 4 moves in advance, so he can gain a few seconds on the clock each time. The players do gain 10 seconds after every move, and there we go. He eliminates 1 pawn. The white knight jumped back. One of the white pawns drops, but now white, again, has this barrier. White's knight defends all the pawns, and Jovanka's plan in action.
Yeah, the king is going to run and attack the h4 pawn. And there it is. Nothing to be done. Look at that knight. It protects every single pawn that could possibly be attacked. And Radjabov, well, it's time, isn't it? Sadly.
It's time for...
Resign.
No, Jovanka.
No.
I think his last move's just very clever, Radjabov. He is going to try and exchange off one set of pawns now on this right side of the board. I mean, he's still completely lost, of course. I think Duda's completely winning. But still a lot of hard work. How does white win? I'm not 100% sure about this plan with the white king. I think it just takes too long. I think he should have gone to the centre, and that would have been just as quick. But, OK, if the white king steps forward now, one square to attack black's h-pawn, black will push his g-pawn to protect it.
Well, I think he's made the move, and now are we going to see some clever move by Duda? I was thinking maybe retreat the knight. OK, he just runs with the b-pawn. After all, you got to keep pushing.
Yeah, pass pawns are there to be pushed, as they say, and black's king is a bit powerless. Black's king has to stop the white knight and those two white connected pawns. He's going to be overwhelmed shortly, but can Radjabov find a way? If he can exchange off all the white pawns on the right half of the board, white's f and g pawns, then he has a small chance, because then he can maybe hope to give up his bishop for white's remaining pawns. I mean, that's a pipe dream. That's so many ifs in one sentence. But, OK, he allows the white king to step forward. What is the idea there? White's king can now just grab the black h-pawn. I don't see it.
I don't see it. Just take the pawn.
Yeah, maybe Duda's also... OK, he does take the pawn eventually. And the black king stepping forward.
Maybe his idea is to actually...
He wants to stop the white b-pawn with the black bishop. And the black king is going to try and grab some pawns, as many pawns as it can, before the hammer falls. I just think it's too slow, unfortunately. Here, OK, there we go. That is a very strong passed pawn. White's king is coming. It's going to be a situation where white is 2 pawns up, most likely. And can black save that one? It does feel like Duda's taking some risks, though. White is running out of pawns.
Yeah, I have to say, you know, maybe I was too eager with my advocate resignation policy, because it does feel that maybe there's some chance. It's, you know, Duda has to play a little bit accurately now.
Yep, so black's king is now going after the white b-pawn, and look at the evaluation bar. It's slowly starting to drop every turn, and it's all about whether white's g-pawn can run through. Here we go, it started the race. If black can give up his bishop for that white g-pawn, it's a draw. Ooh. But the problem is the white g-pawn is so close to promotion, and you can only stop this pawn now with your bishop on a dark square, and you can only stop it on the g7 square. The black king is just too far away. The more I look at it, the more I think you can't stop this pawn.
This is why he's running with the king. But, OK, unfortunately, the bishop is going to be driven back. That's a really bad diagonal. Look at it. It's only got 2 squares. And now is the time to start...
You can go with your king. You can go with your knight to hit this black bishop. The black bishop has to go to the edge of the board now. Only safe square. And, yeah, I think Duda has seen that he can just march his king around and attack that bishop. That is going to be the end of the game. Radjabov, he's falling to defeat here. Black's bishop is powerless against this white pawn.
Yeah, nice idea there.
It was close. It was only by 1 move, actually, 1 tempo. But there we go. Duda gets the win.